right. Hello and welcome to today's session, How to Get Connected Products to Market Faster with Shape Technologies and Cumulocity. Our presentation and discussion today will focus on some of the challenges faced by equipment manufacturers as they develop and launch digital services enabled by connected assets. My name is Alex Graw, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Cumulocity IoT. I'll be your host today. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to address. First of all, we will have Q&A later in the session, so please feel free to go ahead and start adding questions into the chat on the side there, and we'll get to as many of them as possible at the end. Additionally, there will also be a brief survey at the end asking for your feedback on the webinar, and this will help us develop future programming. So we really appreciate your input. Our guests today are Blake Wortley, the Global Product Manager for Software and Systems at Shape Technology, and Adrian Valenzuela, Senior IoT Specialist at Cumulocity. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing from them about their experience using IoT technology to build digital services for connected products. But before I turn things over to Blake and Adrian, just want to give a few minutes to review the landscape facing the makers of connected assets and kind of where we are. So some good news and some bad news. Good news, based on a series of surveys and interviews conducted by Beecham Research, companies are reporting increased levels of success with their IoT projects. Between 2020 and 2024, the percentage of respondents reporting the projects are successful has increased from 42 to 70%. However, only about 16% of respondents rate their projects fully successful. There's still challenges taking IoT from the project stage to the product stage to deliver measurable returns, including issues with scalability, data integrity and management, and the diversity of endpoints that need to be connected. And while project success has been increasing, based on some research from IoT Analytics, we're seeing that the time to market for IoT connected products has increased to nearly 3.5 years. Moving from a project to a product increases the complexity of the deployments and the use cases, brings increased cybersecurity scrutiny, and there's also the issues of an evolving regulatory environment, especially with recent legislation in the EU around the Data Act and the Cyber Resiliency Act. So this raises the question, how can organizations get their connected products to market faster? At Cumulocity, we have always advocated for a buy and build approach rather than the traditional buy or build approach to developing these connected products. In this method, using an IoT platform that can provide the standard IoT requirements around device connectivity, streaming analytics, application integration within a scalable IoT platform that serve as the foundation within prepackaged configurable applications on top, focused on things like device management and more bespoke analytics. Customers are able to buy an IoT platform to obtain a strong foundation with out-of-the-box self-service tools to get started quickly. And this has the benefit of allowing you to focus your development efforts on the applications and digital services that are really going to directly impact and create value for your customers. It eliminates the need for developer teams to create the more basic IoT services around MQTT messaging, time series data storage, things of that nature. It allows you to reduce the total cost of ownership over time by taking more of this buy and build approach. So when we say buy and build, we mean benefiting from the latest IoT platform innovation from a provider like Cumulocity, and then also focusing on building out your own differentiating capabilities. Now, obviously, this is a nice theory, nice to hear from a vendor, I'm sure, but really, does it work in practice? How does it work in practice? How can you be successful in getting products to market faster? And I think that's a great opportunity to hear from from Blake on the front lines, uh, telling how they were able to manage this journey at Shape Technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. And so, my name is Blake Wortley. So I've been the product manager for Shape Technologies for about the last 3.5 years. And so, for what Shape Technologies does is we are the world leader in ultra high pressure technology. We are broken into a few different segments, but we have our main segment is water jet cutting applications. So different brands like Flow Water Jet, KMT, and others make up that group. And so that's the group that we're going to talk about today, because that's where we start our journey with connected devices. And so we are the OEMs of those different machines. And our goal was to go out and how do we connect those systems, those machines into an IoT platform. And so for Shape Technology, we started off with a homegrown, build it ourselves platform. And so that was something that we thought we could take on. And, we're the world leader in this. We know how to build machines. We know what the technology is. We just had to figure out how to get that machine or, all that data into a web page. Sounds simple, right? Well, after almost 3 years of development, trying to manage across all these different avenues that you see here on the screen, from how do we connect our machines, how do we get a gateway or some kind of connectivity module on those machines, how do we get that data into the cloud, the web pieces of it, internal integrations, all these different steps that have to be taken. We did launch it. It took us almost 3 years of development, but we ran into a lot of problems. We had a lot of reliability and scalability issues that caused us to actually shut down this program within about 6 months of launching. So, a big problem, especially from the amount of time it took, the amount of development, and just overall how the company was trying to go to market with this. We kept running into different technical hurdles that were slow to solve. And it really boiled down to we just didn't know how much we didn't know. As it's kind of one of those old adages of, we're experts in some areas, but we weren't an expert in this area. And that became evident pretty quickly. Unfortunately, not quick enough. So after shutting that down, we kind of just said, all right, we're going to level set. Let's start from the ground up. What are our main challenges? So we understood from our first go around that we needed a solution that had to be broad enough to cover multiple business models. Again, we're talking about multiple companies that make up a business unit, and so we have to have something that can go across different ways of go to market, different customer use cases, different customer profiles, and different brands, all while utilizing a limited development team. We also had to make sure that we could look into our machines and see, okay, what we needed to solve for was the lack of machine data really could lead to machine failures that were unpredictable and cause a lot of downtime for our customers. That was one of our main use cases: is how do we help our customers not have unplanned downtime? The other use case is, it's a very highly competitive aftermarket landscape. How do we make sure that we are great partners for our customers and make sure that we are serving them the best of our capabilities and the easiest company to do business with? And so what we did is we started looking at all these different avenues, continuing looking at, okay, if we build our own, but we hired a consulting firm, or is there an off the shelf platform? And so what we landed on was Cumulocity. It just solved the most problems for us. The buy and build approach really gave us what we needed, that core foundation of all those different technologies and all those different platforms bundled together, and then allowed us to build on top of that. So what we've been able to do then is take that and package that with some of our other software into our first SaaS-based product. And so going from a machine manufacturing company into a little bit of this digital revolution, digital change, and getting into a SaaS-based platform and offering. And so we've been able to focus on how we partner that with our new machines, how we can work to upgrade current customers on a yearly subscription fee, and then build out different customer reports and dashboards. That way we can use those for our end users, but also internally. How do we best use that data to be a company that is easy to do business with? So, what did this do for us? It allowed us to be a lot faster to market. So, like I said before, it took us a little over 3 years to develop something that was not scalable, not reliable, into about a 26-month overall design time. Again, the platform itself was ready within about 3 or 4 months. What took the remaining amount of time was that build on top of how do we differentiate, how do we um, customize for our application, our use cases. And so while there was still some learning curves and while there was still a lot of opportunities for us to change things, it was great having a partner like Cumulocity to help us through that journey. Experts like Adrian and others that were able to come alongside of us to help tell us, hey, here's how some other customers are doing this, here's best practices, things like that. What we also did with that ground up approach is we really refocused how we were going to build this and go to market. And so this is where we come into this minimal viable product or MVP. So instead of trying to scale up a complete solution and taking the 40 months or longer to do that, we said, okay, what is our true goal here? What are the problems we're trying to solve, and how do we do that in the quickest and easiest way possible? And then we will do iterative updates and build as we go versus trying to build everything and then launching something that in that time frame those needs may change, those customer use cases may change. So how successful has that been? Well, we launched this fully at the beginning of January of this year, and within that time frame we're at a point now where 83% of our new installs are being hooked up. And so that is, a big jump from where we were before with a lot of reliability issues to where now we're seeing a very high attachment rate and success rate. And so it's been a very good, process so far. We're still early in our process overall. We still have a lot of development work that we're going to continue doing. Again, taking this MVP approach leaves a lot of room to keep growing and keep differentiating as we go. So I just wanted to stop now. Adrian, I know you have a ton of experience across many different levels of IoT. What's your outlook experience on how to use that buy and build approach?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Blake. Just to zoom out a little bit, to introduce myself for everyone listening, my name is Adrian Valenzuela. I'm actually from the Cumulocity team here. I have a long history within IoT, including previously working at AWS and in semiconductors at Texas Instruments for a very long time. So I've seen the product development cycle from both the hardware, the cloud side, and the service provider. I've seen lots of similar patterns and challenges within IoT through over the course of my couple decade career when IoT was even called that. What Blake is alluding to here is actually a pretty common pattern that I've seen across the board. Whether it's on the hardware side or on the software side, what is probably the most common mistake that I've seen customers make when trying to approach the development of a connected product is the belief that either it is easier than it looks or they are smarter than they think. And I'm not going to allude to where Blake and team fall, but the motivation aside, I think they fell into that same pattern where the idea of connecting a product up to the cloud and monitoring is actually pretty easy. I have no doubt that all of us here can go take an off-the-shelf Arduino and a $10 sensor and get it blinking on an open source platform over the course of lunch. That's not hard to do. Where projects commonly fail is where it needs to be put into an enterprise setting with a disparate set of personas who are using the platform, and most importantly, with a high volume of device connected. So once you add scale to that equation, it's a dramatically different value proposition. So what happened with the Shape team is trying to build themselves and realizing it had a variety of possibly supportability gaps, but most importantly, feature gaps, I think is kind of what Blake was trying to allude to, and realizing that they are not IoT experts. They are effectively CNC water cutting experts. They, in my humble opinion, they wisely chose to um, eliminate the undifferentiated heavy lifting of developing and maintaining an IoT platform, and were able to just put their secret sauce to develop the minimum viable product from their applications perspective, and load it on top of an existing IoT platform, which I may have a biased opinion. It was a very strong, very capable platform, and likely better than anything they could build within a realistic timeline or R&D budget.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And even in our process, Adrian, that what we found, when we started talking to other companies that had scaled up different IoT projects, is either it was going to be that process of a buy and build approach, or you're going to have such a large team internally to be able to manage all those different avenues. And so, when you look at how that breaks down from a business case and use case, it was a pretty clear choice, and pretty easy choice actually. From our standpoint of this is the right path for us.
So Blake, maybe we'll talk about this later. You view your 26 months of development time as a benefit. I could argue that sounds like a long time. Tell me why that's actually not a long time.
Yeah, and so and I understand, in when we first started out on this process, in our minds we were thinking 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And again, the platform was ready in that time frame. But what you just alluded to before of that secret sauce, that is where the majority of that time came from. Is okay, we got the platform, we realized its capabilities, we had some simple data flowing to begin with, but what we learned is okay, it's not just about the data. It's not just about connecting A to B, or getting data into a cloud. It's okay, now we have all these other things that we need to do with it. And so that's where it's a great point to transition into what is an MVP? What is what is that approach? And so if you look at from a and being the product manager, I'm going to talk about this from a very commercial product viewpoint. And so as building a new product, here's kind of that tier of all the different things you have to take into account. So a lot of us included, when we first started, we're really heavily focused just on the features, that core base, and features are important. What is the data, what are the different things that you're going to be connecting, but then above that, it's okay, well, now how do you make that usable? How do you make it reliable? How do you scale it? And then ultimately, how are your customers going to interact with it? What's the user experience? And so when I say minimal viable product, in my mind, it's really the same as the minimal viable experience. Those two things, for myself, for the Shape team, we are very heavily customer focused. And so the it's not just about the product, but it's actually about that user experience and how those two things mesh together. And so you have this broad spectrum of all these different things that have to stack on top of each other to be an actual product that's accepted in the industry. How just because you build something that has a lot of cool features, if it's not usable, if it's not reliable or scalable, or customers just don't like interacting with it, it's not going to be successful. So this is where the minimal viable product comes in. It's really essentially not just looking at the features, not just the base, but it's just basically narrowing that entire pyramid down. And so that's really what's important here to remember. You can't just look at the feature sets and say, okay, well, we're only going to focus on 2 or 3 features, and then that's going to be our MVP. It's okay, how are you going to take those 2 or 3 features? How are you going to make them usable? How are you going to make them reliable and scalable? And then ultimately, how are you going to make that something that customers want to interact with? Again, you have to have each a layer. You can't just forgo everything else and look at the feature set only.
Blake, I actually love this concept. I'm sure anyone in the industry who's been here for a while has seen MVPs or minimum viable products as a concept for a while. This is probably, the one step after the acronym soup of a POC, a proof of
Yeah.
concept. Where you flip this on this head is that you transitioned it from a product oriented approach, which is usually feature led, which is um, typically the product of product marketing defining kind of the minimum thing to go out
Hmm.
to market. You flipped it around to be customer centric, to be what the minimum viable experience for the customer.
Hmm.
And many people would argue that working backwards from the customer requirement would lead you to a more optimized solution based on what customers actually need and want. There's often a mismatch, this is not specific to IoT or connected products, but there's a common mismatch between what is the products being brought to market and what customers want. If we were all to focus on the minimum viable experience, we would try to mitigate that concern by being myopically focused on what customers are asking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely agree. And that's where, so what we essentially did is we looked at these different customer personas, not just external customers, different machine operators, maintenance personnel, whatever, but also our internal customers, and said, okay, across all these different personas, what problems are we trying to solve? And I'm a big believer in, okay, let's not focus on what do we feel like the technology we can deliver, or what is the technology that we can develop, but what are the problems? What is the experience we want to deliver? And then we need to build the technology that achieves that. And that's where Cumulocity helped us so much, because it does take away a large section of that into that what you're buying, that platform. And then the only thing that left with, and I say the only thing, it's still a big piece of it. It's kind of that old adage of, okay, getting to 80% is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's doable. Then as you get closer and closer to 100%, it becomes harder and harder and harder to achieve those. And so being able to differentiate what we're doing, being able to look at these different customer personas and say, okay, how do we create a platform that solves problems and gives these different customers what they're looking for. And it is always that hard thing. Being a product manager, you especially delivering a brand new product that a lot of these customers haven't interacted with or don't have a lot of experience with. Sometimes it's hard to gauge what are they actually asking for. And so that's just where you have to really dig in and know your customers. You have to spend the time with them. You have to understand, doing the different, voice of customer, doing the different interactions, understand how they're using your equipment, so that way you can actually create these personas and the use cases for them, that actually executes on the MVP plan.
Like, I absolutely love this, especially the customer a stakeholder perspective. And I could probably easily map this to the evolution of IoT through its infancy and adoption through a type cycle to where it is today. If we were to wind back the clock, I feel like the primary focus of IoT was heavily on the machine operator,
Hmm.
as command and control was the name of the game in IoT. We heavily advertised features was ability to turn off and on certain things and to trigger them at certain times, and this was very important for machine operators. Over time, we saw that capability level up to not look at one connected device, to look at connected systems.
Yep.
So networks of interconnected devices, and this is what a plant manager would very frequently look at. I have conversations on a near daily basis with someone on the shop floor who manages a facility, a building, a factory, and controlling a device doesn't help them. They need
Hmm.
to control the fleet of devices or machinery in their factory. Um, if you compound that with the trend in the industry to adopt more digital twin capabilities, this is a natural extension of what we're doing here with one-off device connectivity to system or plant level um, virtualization of the entire factory.
Hmm.
Even more recently, we've seen this trend to shift things from a capex model to an opex model and trying to create subscription services or asset monetization and subscription models, and which commonly impacts procurement teams.
Mhm.
And most recently, I don't this step there is no technology change for the shift toward maintenance, but I feel like a lot of the conversations I've had in the last 1 to 2 years have been about the field service persona. This is please forgive me if I'm wrong, but there's been very little innovation in that space, because historically this really comes down to putting a man in a van, just
Mhm.
a person on site to go check the status of a thing, which if everyone's on site and they all work at one place, maybe that's not so bad. But if you have geographically distributed assets, or equipment that's in a hard to reach construction site or remote location, you might not be able to do that.
Mhm.
So one of the main advantages, in my humble opinion, for remotely connectable assets is to be able to do remote diagnostic and support, and maybe connecting kind of technology changes. Some of the bleeding edge customers that I'm working with are using augmented reality in their companion apps that allows the maintenance person or even the operator to remotely debug and address pain points or issues with their machinery remotely. So they don't have to send the man
Mhm.
in the van, or I guess the woman in the van. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I love that you factored in all these personas up front and work backwards from that to develop your use case.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that leads into kind of, how do you develop what is a minimal viable experience for our customer? So what our approach was is, okay, so we knew our personas, we knew what our customers, we knew what it was, but how do we build that into, okay, what is the foundation of what we're trying to achieve? So what we really did is we focused on the what, the how, but mostly the why. Why are we doing this? Why as a company? Why as a company are we focused on doing this? And so with that, I took it and broke into, okay, these are basically our 5 pillars of foundation. These are the 5 problems that we're really focused on solving for. And that way, as we built out the feature sets, or we looked at the usability or that user experience, everything filters back into how are we solving these 5 problems? How are we improving the operational efficiency for our customers? How are we helping them use their equipment better, faster, or more efficiently? How, just like you said, with the predictive maintenance, and essentially with the goal of, okay, let's get to condition based, let's get into being able to solve for those maintenance problems. How are we giving customers the data driven decision making powers? There, when you look at that depends on who it is that you're looking through the lens of. Like you mentioned, as a plant manager, you're not just interested in one machine, you're interested in your entire plant. And so having a platform like Cumulocity that allows for a lot of different plugins and a lot of different outputs of that data into other systems makes that an easier transition, because a lot of our customers, they love what they're seeing through a dashboard, they love how we're helping them solve these 5 problems, but they also want to take that same thing and put it into some other platforms that help them as a whole look at their entire factory, and utilizing a platform that has that versus having to build or maintain that ourselves really helps make that more efficient and actually make it possible in a scalable way. But it doesn't come down to just that. How are we making sure that our customers' data is safe and secure? If we're trying to manage that ourselves, that becomes a very complex issue that we are having to stay up with. Where now getting to partner with Cumulocity, that takes a little bit of the pressure off of us internally, and we have that partner that is doing that with us. That has, that the Cumulocity team is helping shoulder that load with us. And then lastly, how are we helping customers save money? And when I say customers, again, this isn't just external customers. We want to help our external customers, again, save money through being more efficient with their machines, being able to do planned downtime instead of break fix. And so there's a lot of ways that we're helping them save money. But also internally, how do we help our service team be more efficient as well? How do we give them the insights where if they are having to go on site, they already know before they come in what the problems are, what the root cause is. They're not getting on site and then having to figure that out. They can come in and already have that data. And then on our roadmap, again, since we took this MVP approach, we still have a lot to get, a lot of ways to go. So we really are just at the starting point. We haven't finished. We're not at the finish line. We haven't launched and said, okay, we're done with this. This is just, we've started. Now we get to keep going. How do we keep building that out into the things you mentioned? How do we improve that efficiency to where before a problem ever happens, we can notify those customers. We can walk them through either how to solve that for themselves, or we can partner with them to either have boots on the ground if that's what's needed, or that augmented reality to help them solve those problems. So again, it's just knowing your customers, breaking that down into what problems do you need to solve for your customers, and then using that as the foundation for everything you do. And so creating that for our technical team to kind of be the guide rails of, okay, you have the freedom and the leverage to take these use cases and solve for them the best way you see fit. But at the end of the day, this is the goalpost of what we have to achieve, and that's been very successful for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But can you remind me how long has your first version of a Cumulocity enabled product has been on the market?
So, we had an early adopters that started in September of 2023, and then full installations that started in January. So not that long. You're talking, about 9, 10 months at this point. But internally, we've had a lot of our internal machines hooked up for the last couple of years actually, that we've been doing a lot of testing with, that we've been doing a lot of different configurations and improvements and things like that. And so we're still again relatively new, but it's something that we've been building and working on for several years now.
Interesting. And I know it's only been maybe a year since you've been working with external customers. Have you started to see some of these 5 benefits already play out in practice?
Yeah, and so some of the use cases that have been really amazing to watch, especially around I'm going to focus on the maintenance and the efficiency, because of where we're at in our journey. And so some of our customers that have been able to monitor their machine utilization. So the way our machines work is, we're able to measure how long that machine's on versus how long it's actually cutting parts, and then put that into some different graphical, dashboards and helpful information. And so they were able to actually see that they were losing a lot of time because, an operator would run a job on the machine, it would cut the parts, but then once that was complete, that he would have to wait for a material handler to come by to bring him the next sheet of material, things like that. And they just didn't realize how much time they were losing with that. So they were able to change how they approach that they were able to stage material differently, and even just the workflow of their shop in general, and gain a lot more throughput throughout a day. So they were able to gain, I think it was around like 28% more machine utilization from that. And so it was, highly effective for them. And then on the maintenance side, so water jets themselves, have a few different components. These are machines that are taking water and cranking it up to about 94,000 psi in some cases. And so you have this tremendous amount of pressure in really the physics of how the water is reacting under that kind of pressure changes. And so being on the leading edge of that, being the innovators, the inventors of the technology between our different brands that developed and have been the ones that brought this entire technology to the world. Sometimes it's interesting how those different materials will work. And so when you're pushing that all through a machine, how do you make sure that as that high pressure, it is eroding out those core components that you need. And so being able to help customers be more predictive in that maintenance by calculating their cycles and their hours of usage, and what does that mean, and being able to take all the technology or all the knowledge that our technical team has, because again, we are very blessed in having employees who've been with the company, 20 plus years, that have all this knowledge, and being able to extract that in a way to say, okay, based on this usage, based on these different factors, how do we help tell customers when they need to be swapping out these components more predictively? And so it's just help customers be a lot more upfront, be able to plan that downtime, and then also from our standpoint, being able to partner with them to give them that information, give them our knowledge and expertise, in a way that helps them do business better.
That's awesome. You mentioned a little bit ago that you have was it your 20% efficiency gains or your end customers' 20% gain?
The end customer
That's
was able to increase them. Yeah, exactly. It's an amazing, story that just love to get to tell, because it helped take that customer and get them just that next step in their evolution and in their differentiation of what they're doing, and just be more effective.
so cool.
Yeah. And so kind of the last thing I just want to touch on here again, you saw before, that how when we were doing it internally, all those different pieces that we had to manage. And so what does this buy and build approach look like? And so for us, there were some learning curves. We thought that we were, even though we hear the words buy and build, and so you're going to buy this platform, and then you're going to build on top of it, it's easy to get lost in the, okay, well, I'm buying this application, it's going to solve all my problems, it's going to make this easy. And it does simplify a lot of things, but it doesn't eliminate the need still for the internal lift and the internal work. So what we've done is we've taken our machines, what you basically see here on the left side of the screen are these high pressure pumps that are doing all the work to the heart of our systems, and an XY cutting table. So this is the where you actually are, the water meets the part, if you will. And so being able to how do we connect in those and get the data that's important to deliver the experience that we're looking for. And so that side of things, that left hand side, still is what took a lot of the internal development lift. But then once we got to that point, we had the application already that we could pipe that to, that made it very easy to then output into what you see here with some, some different dashboards and user home screens that allow us to do a lot more. And there's other things in here, like there's different BI reports and APIs and so forth that allows a lot of flexibility in how we utilize that data, the ways that we're able to create custom reports from it, and just use it in general. And so this is how it's changed for us. This is what it's done for us. And really, like, for us to try to do this internally, we still would be in the development cycle with no end in sight. And so it just made this, possible, even though, 26 months is not a short time frame in the reality of what it would be otherwise. We feel like it is something that was extremely manageable and successful.
That's fantastic. And I love these dashboards, and I say that because they look very familiar as being from the Cumulocity platform for the most part.
Yeah, and so from us, I just want to touch on real quick, like, how we've been able to help solve this problem. So, what we've been able to do is actually show customers, different warnings and stuff going on with the machines, and being able to utilize those built-in tools to notify them, not just through a dashboard, but through email and text-based messaging to say, hey, you have a possible problem here. You better go solve for this thing, or just that machine utilization that you can kind of see here. What's the status of your machine? And so this B will use that and then take some of the built-in analytic tools and so forth, and just help condition that data into something that's actually useful. There's a lot of companies that out there, and even our first approach, where you're just basically pushing out raw data. But what does that raw data mean? A hydraulic oil temp, for example, everyone knows, okay, if it gets too hot, that's a problem. But what does it mean if it's getting hotter over a set amount of time? It hasn't reached that critical point yet, but over, say, a week or 2 weeks or a month, if you're steadily seeing that temperature going up a little by each day, what does that mean? So being able to utilize those tools to take that threshold and say, okay, well, if we see a certain rate of change, we're going to need to notify that customer and actually elevate an alarm earlier in the process, so that way we can stay ahead of it. So there's just so many tools that help expedite, now that we're to that point of in this MVP cycle of saying, okay, we've got data, we're pushing data into to the cloud. What's the next steps, and how do we continue that development process? So it's been extremely beneficial for us.
So Blake, I feel like you're teasing us. Maybe we have time now, or maybe later, but you focused heavily on the MVP approach, the minimum viable product, and you've alluded to things and capabilities that will come in the future. Can you tease out where you think you're going to take the platform from a roadmap perspective?
Yeah, so it's a multi-year roadmap for sure. It's everyone has their 5-year, 3-year, whatever the company is looking for. And so what I've done is taken that and broken it down into, okay, we have our short-term goals where we have direct use cases that we're building to. So like being able to take specific jobs and monitor, okay, uh, a specific job. How long did that job take? When you quote it, as an end customer, when you quote a job, you have some idea of how long it's going to take to cut that material. But even within that, every material is a little bit different, and so sometimes your runtime is a little different, or your operator, maybe he changed something for some reason, and that machine's not running at the rate you thought it would. So being able to actually help customers see that real time of, okay, how long are these jobs taking? How much time did it take? What were your settings? That way they can optimize those. And then with the end goal, though, that's still just a step in the process. To then the next step being, okay, how do we help the machine through machine learning, through those different tools to actually come back and say, hey, you ran this part. It took, say it takes 10 minutes. Make these changes, and you can run that same part in 7 minutes and 20 seconds. And so it's that evolution of how do we make our machine smarter? How do we help our customers not have to be an expert in all the different nuances of how to optimize machine, but the machine will optimize itself to help the output and the outcome of a faster machine, more throughput, higher efficiency. And then again, going back to those pillars, it's again moving from, okay, you've utilized this machine based on so many cycles or so many hours, to then, okay, based on these different factors, instead of just looking at a factor of time or cycles, into multiple factors like rate of change of different measurements, different sensors that we're building into our products now that we weren't before, so that we can get the right readings, so we can get the right measurements to say, okay, based on all these different factors, you have X amount of time before a failure, not just you have accumulated so much time, but then actually a failure will occur within the next, 6 days at the current run rate, or the next, X amount of cycles. So that way we can help those customers know, how much runway do I have here? Okay, I know I have to replace this component, but is it, do I have a month to run at that? Or is it going to fail tomorrow? Is it going to fail the next time I turn on? So just helping customers understand what is the runway before that failure. So those are a couple of the big areas right now that we're continuing to develop in our roadmap, and different feature sets that we're building out.
That's awesome, Blake. And this actually ties into a question that came in chat a little bit ago. So when you're defining the minimum viable experience that you want to achieve, how do you reconcile your internal product expertise and desires with the customer feedback that you're getting?
Yeah. So again, it's so you take that customer feedback, but you have to be able to peel that back into what is the true problem you're trying to solve for. Because again, customers are going to give you a lot of feedback as far as, the machine doesn't do this for me, or I want a machine that does that. But how do I peel that back into, okay, what is the problem statement, the true problem that I need to solve for? And then how do you apply your expertise to solve that problem?
Gotcha. Oh, and we've got another meaty question. We only have a couple minutes left, but someone really wants you to dive deep into the specific parts of the Cumulocity IoT platform they were using, where you like how you did data ingestion and processing.
Hmm.
For example, how you use Cumulocity IoT to handle protocol conversion and communication between different devices and systems. With
Yeah,
2 minutes
that's a
left,
really good.
with two
Go
minutes
ahead.
left, how can you address that?
All right, so yeah, so I'll try to go quickly here, and feel free, hopefully, reach out to me through this platform or whatever. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to speak to this at any time. So yes, our machines all use a lot of different protocol, and that was one of the problems that we couldn't solve for on our own. Is how do we take these machines of different variations and different levels? And so with utilizing the Cumulocity platform, and then specifically FinEdge.io that lives on that gateway, to kind of be that library between them. And so basically being able to take the different machine data that we need, the image, or essentially the brains of the interconnection between the machine and the cloud, is then able to take that, parse it into essentially basic information, and then the Cumulocity platform allows for that information to be displayed in usable widgets and graphs and so forth. And so it's utilizing those dashboard tools, utilizing those the API management, and then also a lot of the certificate management, things like that. Because security side, and I know we're almost out of time, but being able to have self-authenticating certificates and not needing to manage that ourselves, actually manage that through the platform. So those are some of the big key areas that the Cumulocity platform itself, those built-in tools helped us, and then the expertise of the Cumulocity team to guide us into what is the best practices. Thin Edge IO being one of them, and some others that you can use that become those protocols. So I do appreciate the questions because they're good. Again, if we don't have time to answer them all, please reach out to me, and happy to help.
Yeah, we also got a question about some case studies or white papers for digital twin applications. We'll follow up with that offline because unfortunately we're out of time. I know, I think you have at least one more slide, but maybe we can close out on that thought and we can wrap up from there, Blake.
Yeah, no, it's just
Oh, look at this.
yeah, we did get through it, but yeah, I think we could both talk about this pretty much all day.
Perfect. Well, Blake, Alex, I always love these sessions. I think it's a fun time to hear about your use cases and how you built the platform. And to be honest, I love hearing about the pain points that you ran into because there's no compression algorithm for experience. You guys hit the roadblocks, you hit the speed bumps, and you guys figured out how to get a product out to market. So that's awesome to hear, Blake.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate it. And so I love talking about this because being on my side, we're getting to share our experiences, share where we failed to hopefully help other companies get to be that next step, in the evolution and help them avoid some of those pain points, and happy to share our experiences with whoever has questions.
Perfect. Well, I'll speak for myself, maybe for you, Blake, but you can find Blake or myself on LinkedIn. I'm sure we will come up easily with our company names there. Feel free to reach out, connect, and ask us any more questions that we didn't get to today.
Yep.
Thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Blake and Adrian, for a great session. And again, you'll see a survey pop up when you close, and we'd appreciate any feedback you can offer. But thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time today.